from witness. That was the essence of Hrant. You can, it just reminds us how many of us got the same hug from him, that embrace, and the fact that he never discriminated between peoples. There's the other side of Hrant. It's amazing. We're moving on. I'm hoping that I can hear some of the answers to my questions, and I think the next one is my best shot because we have the experience and wisdom of one of the greatest Armenian scholars, someone who doesn't need an introduction from me, but I'll have to because I've done it for the others, so just bear with me. But Richard Hovannisian is a professor of Armenian. Professor of Armenian and Near Eastern History at the University of California, Los Angeles. He served as the Associate Director of the G.E. von Grünbaum Center for Near Eastern Studies from 1978 to 1995. A member of the UCLA faculty since 1962. He has organized the undergraduate and graduate programs in Armenian and Caucasian history. Dr. Hovannisian, a native of Tulare, California, received his BA and MA from University of California, Berkeley, and his PhD from UCLA. Professor Hovannisian was appointed the first holder of the Armenian Educational Foundation Endowed Chair in Modern Armenian History at the UCLA. He's a Guggenheim Fellow and has received many honors for his scholarship, civic activities, and advancement of Armenian studies. He has been honored by His Holiness Karakin I with the Medal of St. Mesrop Mashtots for his advancement of Armenian studies. In 1990, Richard Hovannisian was elected to the Armenian Academy of Sciences, becoming the first social scientist living abroad to be so honored. He has received honorary doctorates from Yerevan State University in 1994 and Artsakh State University in 1997. In 1998, on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the First Republic, Dr. Hovannisian was presented the Moses Horenatsi Medal, an award by the President of the Republic of Armenia. On November 9, 2001, a Jubilee honorary celebration marked more than 40 years of Dr. Hovannisian's truly exemplary academic and personal life as a scholar, teacher, mentor, and a friend. In 2002, the President of Artsakh, on behalf of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, personally presented to Dr. Hovannisian the Republic's Medal of St. Mesrop Mashtots. It's truly, really, truly my honor to call on Professor Hovannisian.
Հրանտինքի հիշողներ, հարկովներ, եկե խոստովանեմ, որ այս երեկո ես կդժվարանամ եւ մինչեւ երեք չէի գնալ գետրոնալ այս երեկոյի վրա, որովհետեւ այս մեկ տարվա ընթացքին այնքան բաներ գրվեցան, այնքան բաներ խոսվեցան, որ կարծես թե ինչ որ ասենք, ինչ որ այսօր առնահայտենք պիտի ալան կրկնություններ եւ ոչ մեկ խորի մաս ունեցող։ Սակայն պետք է ասեմ, որ ներշնչվեցա այս տխուր ֆիլմեն, որովհետեւ տեսանք, որ անարդարության դեմ, ինչպես ինքը պատրաստ էր չհուսախաբվել կամ չհուսահատվել, պայքարել անարդարության դեմ, եւ այդ միայն մեկ փոքր գալվածի համար Եվ մենք գիտենք, որ ասկովին մենք ունենք ամբողջ երկիրը գալվածներով լեցուն, որոնց համար այդ պայքարը կշարունակվի։ Գիտեմ ևս, որ հայախոսեք մեծամասնությամբ եւ շատ ավելի հաճելի պիտի լար, եթե ես հայերենով շարունակեի իմ դգար հայերենովս, սակայն քանի որ երեք նստեցա եւ Սկսա մտածել, թե ինչ պետք է ասվի, կամ ինչ կարելի է ասել, շարադրեցի այս 10 վայրկյանոց երևի Ankara'nın kırbaç madazunlar, moron hima zezet betkebarshan. It was at Saraya, along the shore of the Bosphorus on June 20th, 2000. It was a fateful day when seagulls from the Black Sea flew nearby, bringing them also the sad news of my dear mother-in-law's, Kongoi's, death in faraway Fresno, California. And here we were, Vartiter and I, standing at the mouth of the Bosphorus on the Black Sea in a very appropriate way because this was her sea. She was born in Ordu, in the province of Trebizond, where her childhood experiences in this coastal town, surrounded by filbert garim trees, remained with her and her loved ones throughout her life. It was that same night, on June 20th, the year 2000, that a tall, lanky, crudely handsome young man came to visit us, and as we sat on the balcony with the flickering lights and eerie sounds of the Bosphorus as a backdrop, to share with us his intense feelings, to become the herald of the new reality, perhaps the sad reality that the Turkish-Armenian community was rapidly changing, that the Armenian language was in retreat as the youth spoke Armenian with increasing difficulty while being entirely at ease in Turkish, that Armenian external marriages were on a sharp rise, and that the traditional Armenian organizations, institutions, and newspapers were unable to meet the challenges. For all of those reasons, he had begun to publish Agos, a compromise, a retreat, but necessary to develop a sense of Turkish-Armenian self-awareness and pride through the medium of the Turkish language, and to encourage Armenian integration into Turkish daily life rather than a self-imposed isolation, which has been the defensive weapon of nearly every minority community all over the world. He also spoke of Armenian-Turkish relations, his involvement in Turkish politics, his belief that the traditional Armenian ways of addressing the Turkish issues and the genocide had to be modified, that new avenues had to be explored. For him, the approach was through remaining a genuine son of the land, insisting on his birthright, cultivating and motivating dialogue, distinguishing between the Turkish state and its odious negationist narrative on the one hand, and the other hand, civil society, which still, in its infancy, was the only hope for the Armenian community and for acknowledgement of the Armenian calamity and those responsible for it. His thoughts and his passion seemed extreme, but they were genuine, deep-seated, and believable. He was complex, too, as his inner soul reflected things that his outer rational being did not. But is that not true of all of us? Rarely do we say or reveal everything we feel and think. He said different things in different ways in different surroundings. Hrant Dink was fully aware of this, but he did not believe that this was contradictory behavior. He could rightfully and openly emphasize his approach to genocide recognition when he spoke in Yerevan, while he framed the same objectives in a different language with different nuances when he wrote in Turkey, when he spoke of a shared homeland and a history, and the need of it to develop a civil society that could seek and find the truth without fear and retribution. And just as those of us in the arena, in the diaspora, feel good about ourselves when we reach out to international audiences to television viewers, to newspapers, to teachers, and to students, thinking that perhaps, just perhaps, we are making a small difference, so too did Hrant Dink feel good about himself when he was able to stir deep emotions and evoke tears from his Turkish colleagues with stories of the need and the right of the Armenian to die and to lie in his own soil. And so now, the well-known story of his Armenian woman from Europe who went back to visit her native Sebastia, where she died and was ultimately buried. And in Hrant Dink's words, the water had found a crack in the stone and seeped down into its native soil. Such imagery is poetry. It embraces the universal human dimensions that men, women, children, intellectuals, and blue-collar workers can share in common. But Hrant Dink's approach was not tolerated. It was condemned in the nationalist press. He was spit upon, shoved about, insulted, and convicted. Hate mail and threats abounded. And alas, not only did that abuse come from Turkish chauvinists, but also from some of his very own. Even individuals in this very auditorium asked him insinuating, insulting, and derogatory questions about whether he was connected with or funded by the Turkish government. Do I agree with Hrant Dink? Yes, in general principle. No, in many practical realities. I have understood his statements, yet have been troubled that they could be exploited by the very forces that stand in opposition to him and to the conciliation that he sought. Yes, I understood fully, yet was uncomfortable with his declaration that if denial of the Armenian genocide was criminalized in France, he would be the first to challenge that law. As for him, there was a higher principle at stake, one that reflected very directly on his ability to declare in Turkey that there had been a genocide, and to do so without fear of the ugly penal code that would convict him of insulting Turkishness. Do I have an alternate approach beyond our old, unbending, inflexible, maximalist demands, however unrealistic, that have been heard for decades and that continue to inspire us, young and old alike? No, I do not have that answer. Thus, I too have come to welcome, to place hope on progressive Turkish colleagues, of accepting the logic of sincere and genuine dialogue that is not used as camouflage or for deception and distraction. None of my Turkish counterparts can give me what I really want. But they can at least do what American, German, and now French and other scholars are doing in facing up to their history, exposing the taboos and the self-serving false state narratives, setting the record straight, providing some measure of comfort and solace to a bewildered and still aggrieved people. Yet even as I rejoice when scores of Turkish scholars weep at the story of the Armenian woman who returned to the soil of Sebastia, and even as I am comforted when thousands of Turks of all walks of life gather to remember Hrant Dink and to commit themselves to his ideals, I am forced also to remember. Forced to remember 1908, for example, the great rejoicing of the Armenians at the Young Turk Revolution, the embracing, the optimism, the hope, the day of deliverance, the time of Hurriyet, of Azaduchun, only to be followed by the bloody reaction of 1909. Just as the outpouring in Istanbul in January 2007 was followed by the fascist reactions throughout Turkey and beyond. The dark daggers of intolerance became drawn and sharpened, seeking out even Turkish writers and thinkers who could not feel safe even beyond the borders of Turkey. The deep state has unleashed forces to fulfill its wishes as it looks the other way. But the time has come, perhaps, when that very state is arriving at the realization that it can no longer control that which it has created. Just as the Janissary Corps eventually came to dictate to the sultans, so too the youthful nationalists who have drunk the poisonous potion of the state may be slipping beyond the grasp of the dark forces that have nurtured them. At the convention of the Middle East Studies Association held in Montreal this last November, a joint session sponsored for the first time by the Turkish Studies Association and the Society for Armenian Studies was a moving sight, with scholars of diverse ethnicities and religious backgrounds present to reflect upon the legacy of Hrant Dink, what he stood for, his unique character, his call for the development of civil society without arbitrary legislation. There along are scholars Hrant Chilingirian, Levon Zekeyan, Fatme Muget Gocek, and the new editor of Agos, Etienne Majubian. There was struck a responsive chord with the audience. They gained sustained and enthusiastic applause when Majubian reiterated Dink's call to lay aside ethnic labels and the competition of who invented what, or of what ethnicity was this or that official, and rather to embrace the concept of a common Anatolian culture in which all the component groups participated. It was, and it is, a beautiful concept. But what does it mean? Does it mean romanticizing an imagined past golden age, when in a plural society, Armenians, Greeks, Jews, Kurds, Turks, Arabs, Alawis, Zazas, and Yazidis all lived on a common land and a shared common culture, from food and music? And if the call is for embracing a shared heritage, does it also mean going back to an Anatolian society where in reality there was a dominant group in a position of power and privilege over subject groups? For if so, would that not only reinforce today's deplorable reality? Majubian did not mean this, nor did Hrant Dink mean this, nor did those who applauded for so long and so enthusiastically the statement of a common Anatolian identity, as this was their way of rejecting intolerant Turkish nationalism. But still, this question remains a challenge for us, and especially for our progressive Turkish colleagues, as we commemorate the towering figure and powerful impact of Hrant Dink. He knew, and he felt his approaching tragedy. Yet somehow he could not bring himself to think that it would actually happen, or to take the decisive steps to avoid his fate. Was it his qasmet? Was it written on his brow that he should become the martyr? Martyrs, as we know, sacrifice themselves knowingly and purposefully, whereas victims die without knowledge and without purpose. Hrant Dink knew. Hrant Dink would reiterate the words of Jesus Christ in asking that this bitter cup be taken from him. But in the end, he surrendered to the higher purpose for which he had been called, thus gaining an everlasting place in the mind and the soul of humankind. Let us hope that we will have the strength and ability to understand the essence and mission of Hrant Dink, and ourselves to be prepared to answer selflessly the call to service and, if necessary, to sacrifice. Hishenk Hrant Dink, Harkink, Haradevink, Haftaharink, Yevi Vercho, Haftanagink.